First Contact and Confusion. High Commander Velox of the Galactic Council's Intelligence Division stared at the holographic display with all four of his eyes, mandibles twitching in confusion. The massive vessel before him defied conventional military logic. Its hull stretched nearly 2 kilometers, rivaling their largest battle cruisers, yet it carried no visible weapons arrays. Instead, its entire structure seemed dedicated to storage and what appeared to be cooking facilities. "Explain this again," Analyst Zixkar, Velox commanded, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the soft blue light of the hologram. The younger analyst's appendages fluttered nervously as she manipulated the display, zooming in on various sections of the human vessel. "High Commander, this is the THS Comfort, one of humanity's newest fleet additions. According to our intel, it's classified as a morale support vessel. Its primary mission is to provide what humans call comfort food to their military operations." Velox's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair focused on the detailed scans. "And you're certain this isn't some form of deception? A weapons platform disguised as whatever this is?" "Absolutely certain, sir. We've monitored it for 3 standard cycles. It travels between human battle groups, delivering vast quantities of synthesized organic compounds that humans consume for pleasure rather than pure sustenance." The High Commander began pacing, his crystalline legs clicking against the observatory deck. The humans had proven to be an enigma since their emergence onto the galactic stage 50 years ago. Their rapid technological advancement and military successes had earned them both respect and wariness from the Galactic Council. But this was beyond comprehension. "Show me the resource allocation," he ordered. New data streams filled the air. Velox's analytical mind, honed through centuries of military service, struggled to process the figures before him. The humans were dedicating nearly 15% of their fleet's resources to these comfort vessels. "There's more, sir," Zixkar continued. "We've intercepted communications indicating that 3 more vessels of this class are under construction. They're calling it the Homefront Initiative." Velox settled into his command pod, feeling the weight of this information. In all his years serving the Council, he'd never encountered a species that would dedicate such massive resources to something so frivolous. The Draxid armies sustained themselves on nutrient paste. The Hive Collective of Sector 7 operated on pure solar energy. Even his own species required only mineral supplements to maintain peak fighting efficiency. "What happens," he asked slowly, "when human soldiers don't receive these comfort supplies?" Zixkar's color shifted to a deeper shade of blue, a sign of distress among her kind. "We have one documented incident, sir. A human outpost in the Rigel sector had its comfort supply lines cut off for 2 standard weeks due to an asteroid field disruption. The soldiers' combat effectiveness dropped by 47%. There were reports of something they call hangry, a combination of hunger and anger that apparently makes them more aggressive but less tactical." Less tactical yet more aggressive. Velox's mandibles clicked in thought. That could be useful information. "Sir, there's something else you should know." Zixkar brought up another hologram, this one showing human military recruitment patterns. "Their comfort vessel program has increased recruitment by 300%. Apparently, the guarantee of good food, even in deep space, is a significant motivator for human soldiers." Velox rose from his command pod, his crystalline form catching the light as he moved to study the data more closely. The implications were troubling. The Council had always assumed that humanity's rapid military expansion was driven by aggressive territorial ambitions or resource needs. But this suggested something far more complex about their species' psychology. "Prepare a full report for the Council," he ordered finally. "Include your recommendation that we revise our strategic assessments of human military capabilities. We've been analyzing them as if they think like us, as if their military decisions follow the same logical patterns as other spacefaring species. Clearly, we've been wrong." As Zixkar hurried to comply, Velox continued studying the massive vessel's schematics. Something about this troubled him deeply. Any species that would dedicate such resources to something so seemingly unnecessary must either be incredibly foolish or operating on a level of strategic thinking that the Council had yet to comprehend. And Zixcar, he added as the analyst reached the door, begin monitoring human civilian food distribution networks as well. I want to know everything about how they use this comfort food in their society. Something tells me we're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle here. As the hologram of the THS Comfort slowly rotated before him, Velox couldn't shake the feeling that the Council's traditional methods of analyzing potential threats might be dangerously inadequate when it came to understanding humanity's true capabilities. The taste of war. 6 months after Velox's initial report, the Galactic Council's strategic chamber hummed with tense energy. Holographic displays showed the movements of human fleets across contested space, each marked by their accompanying morale vessels. The chamber's crystalline walls reflected the concern on the faces of the gathered representatives from 17 spacefaring species. Supreme Strategist Karthak, a towering figure of the militant Vrax species, dominated the central platform. His scales shifted color with barely contained agitation as he presented the latest intelligence. The humans have expanded their comfort vessel program beyond our initial projections, he announced, his voice resonating through the chamber. They've not only completed their planned vessels, but have begun converting existing cargo ships into what they're calling quick-service platforms. A hive representative, a shimmering cloud of synchronized microscopic organisms, pulsed with confusion. Resources that could be allocated to weapons, shields, or propulsion systems, wasted on these comfort vessels. It defies all military logic. And yet, Karthak responded, manipulating the holographic display. Their military effectiveness continues to increase. Observe this footage from the Proxima engagement. The chamber darkened as a battle recording played out before them. A human fleet, significantly outnumbered by pirate forces, executed a series of brilliant maneuvers. What caught everyone's attention, however, was the massive vessel at the fleet's core, a converted cargo ship now emblazoned with the symbol of a crown. This vessel, designated King's Comfort, maintained position throughout the entire engagement, Karthak explained. The humans actually devoted resources to protecting it, rather than using those ships for offensive operations. And yet, the recording showed the human forces systematically dismantling the pirate fleet, their coordination and morale seemingly unaffected by the lengthy battle. Velox, newly promoted to strategic advisor, stepped forward. My previous analysis suggested that disrupting these supply lines would cripple human military effectiveness. I now believe that assessment was incomplete. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Velox rarely admitted to analytical errors. Elaborate, commanded the council leader, their energy form flickering with interest. We've been monitoring human communications during these engagements, Velox explained. Their troops don't just fight for these comfort supplies, they fight better because of them. There are countless references to comfort food providing something called a taste of home. The chamber's AI translated the concept, but most representatives still struggle to comprehend it. Their species had evolved beyond such psychological dependencies. Or had they? Karthak's scales shifted to a deep blue of contemplation. I studied human military history. They've always emphasized the connection between sustenance and morale. Ancient human armies traveled with cook fires. Their naval vessels carried fresh bread ovens. This isn't a weakness in their military doctrine. It's a deliberate evolution of a proven strategy. The hive representative pulsed skeptically. You suggest we've misinterpreted their actions entirely. Consider this, Velox interjected. While we've been puzzling over their allocation of resources to these comfort vessels, human military recruitment has reached unprecedented levels. Their troops' combat effectiveness in extended deployments exceeds all historical metrics. And most concerning, he paused, ensuring he had the chamber's full attention. They're beginning to export this concept to their allies. New holograms appeared, showing modified comfort vessels designed for other species' dietary needs and preferences. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just maintaining its own unusual military doctrine. It was reshaping galactic military culture. The Rigel Confederation has already contracted them to build 2 comfort vessels for their fleet, Carthac reported. The free worlds of Antares are in negotiations for 5 more. Even the collective is expressing interest. The council leader's energy form pulsed with concern. Are we witnessing the emergence of a new form of human diplomatic influence? More than that, Velox responded. We're witnessing a fundamental challenge to our understanding of military efficiency. The humans have identified something we overlooked: the psychological value of familiar sustenance in maintaining not just troop readiness, but troop humanity. Their weakness is their strength, Carthac mused. While we focused on designing soldiers who could survive on minimal sustenance, they invested in ensuring their troops could thrive. We engineered for efficiency. They engineered for morale. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. On the holographic display, another human comfort vessel glided between the stars, its massive form a testament to a military doctrine that valued the intangible aspects of warfare as much as the physical ones. We have 2 choices, Velox concluded. We can continue to view this as an inefficient allocation of military resources, or we can acknowledge that humanity has discovered something about warfare that we, in all our advanced evolution, have forgotten: the power of comfort in maintaining the will to fight. As the council debated their response, none of them noticed the small notification appearing on a secondary display. Human comfort vessel production had just doubled again. The revolution in galactic military doctrine wasn't coming. It was already here, served with a side of what humans called fries. Operation Golden Arcus. The war room aboard the Vrax flagship, Eternal Efficiency, thrummed with anticipation. Carthac stood before a tactical display showing the Arcturus sector, where dozens of red markers indicated human comfort vessels moving between battle groups. His scales had taken on the deep purple hue of decisive action. Operation Golden Arches begins in 6 hours, he announced to the assembled commanders. Our analysis indicates that this sector contains the highest concentration of human comfort vessels in their territory. By striking here, we can demonstrate the fundamental flaw in their military doctrine. Velox, present as a strategic advisor, felt his crystalline form vibrate with unease. Supreme strategist, I must once again voice my concerns. The humans' dedication to protecting these vessels suggests weakness. Carthac interrupted. A weakness we will exploit. The tactical advantage of forcing them to defend these vulnerable supply ships while we strike their actual military assets is undeniable. The holographic display shifted, showing the planned attack vectors. 3 battle groups would simultaneously strike the sector, targeting the comfort vessels first. According to their intelligence, this would trigger a protective response from human forces, leaving their critical military installations exposed. They've made their choice, Carthac continued. Instead of building proper warships, they waste resources on these floating kitchens. Today, we show them the price of such sentimentality. As the commanders filed out to their ships, Velox approached Carthac privately. Supreme strategist, there's something about this that troubles me. The humans are not fools. Their military success rate is built on softness. Carthac's scales rippled with irritation. You've spent too much time studying them, Velox. You're beginning to think like them. The first signs that Operation Golden Arches might not unfold as planned came 3 hours after the initial strikes began. The human comfort vessels, far from being easy targets, demonstrated shocking maneuverability for their size. Their defensive capabilities, hidden beneath seemingly civilian exteriors, proved formidable. Impossible. Carthac raged as reports flooded in. They're food transport ships. How are they? Sir, a tactical officer interrupted. The King's Comfort is launching fighters. The massive vessel that had drawn their attention months ago had indeed opened previously unseen hangar bays, disgorging squadrons of fighters. But these were unlike any fighters they'd encountered before. Each bore distinctive markings, a crowned figure holding what appeared to be their food items. Velox's analytical mind raced. They knew. They've been preparing for this exact scenario. The tactical display told the story. What had seemed like a scattered distribution of comfort vessels now revealed itself as a carefully planned defensive grid. Each vessel served as a rally point for human forces, their positions creating a web that caught Karthak's attack groups in a devastating crossfire. Signal the third battle group to commence their attack run, Karthak ordered, his scales now a sickly gray of desperate aggression. Sir, the communications officer responded. Third battle group is not responding. New signals appeared on the tactical display. The third battle group's position had been overwhelmed by human forces emerging from what they'd dismissed as civilian traffic. The humans hadn't just anticipated their attack. They'd baited it. How many? Karthak demanded. At least 30 comfort vessels were hiding among the civilian ships, Velox reported, analyzing the data streams, each one apparently carrying a full complement of fighters and support craft. We thought they were running supply lines. They were positioning an entire reserve fleet. The tactical display bloomed with new contacts as human warships dropped out of FTL at predetermined positions. The comfort vessels, far from being vulnerable targets, had served as anchor points for an enormous tactical web. Sir, the tactical officer's voice shook, we're receiving a transmission from the King's Comfort. A holographic display shifted to show a human admiral, standing in what appeared to be a massive food preparation area. Behind him, crews worked at their stations, simultaneously preparing meals and coordinating battle operations. This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Naval Forces, the human announced, his calm voice at odds with the chaos of battle around them. I must thank you for this opportunity to demonstrate why we call these vessels force multipliers. Your attack has validated years of preparation and training. Now shall we discuss terms? Karthak's scales had gone completely gray. Terms. Of course. Our ships carry enough supplies to feed your entire fleet for a month. I suggest we start there. In my experience, military strategy is best discussed over a good meal. Velox watched as understanding finally dawned in Karthak's eyes. The humans hadn't built their comfort vessels out of weakness or sentimentality. They created an entirely new form of warfare, one that transformed the basic need for sustenance into a strategic asset. As human forces completed their encirclement, Velox couldn't help but appreciate the elegance of it all. They had dismissed these ships as support vessels, never considering that an entire military doctrine could be built around the principle of comfort as a weapon. The first images of captured Vrak soldiers, cautiously sampling human comfort food while under guard, would soon become iconic throughout the galaxy. Operation Golden Arches hadn't just failed. It had demonstrated to every spacefaring race that humanity's approach to warfare was anything but soft. The breaking point. The detention level aboard the THS King's Comfort wasn't what Supreme Strategist Karthak had expected. Instead of the stark cells common to military vessels, he found himself in what the humans called a mess hall, surrounded by the unfamiliar aromas of what they termed comfort food. His scales had settled into a mottled pattern of confusion and reluctant interest. Your troops are responding remarkably well to the situation, Admiral Chen noted, settling into the seat across from him. The human placed 2 steaming containers on the table. I thought you might like to understand why. Through the transparent walls, Karthak could see his captured soldiers in adjacent rooms, their scales showing unprecedented color patterns as they consumed human food. Many displayed the deep blue of contentment, a state he hadn't observed in combat troops in decades. You've drugged them, Karthak accused, though without much conviction. Admiral Chen laughed, pushing one of the containers toward him. Just try it. Our sensors indicate it's completely compatible with your physiology. We've been studying potential allies and adversaries for years, including their dietary preferences. Velox, who had been granted advisory status even in captivity, watched with analytical interest as Karthak cautiously sampled the offered food. The Supreme Strategist's scales immediately shifted through several colors before settling on a deep resonant blue. "This is remarkable," Karthak admitted, "but it proves nothing about military effectiveness, doesn't it?" Chen gestured to a holographic display materializing above their table. It showed efficiency metrics for both human forces and their recent captives. "Notice the pattern." Velox leaned forward, his crystalline form refracting the data in fascinating ways. "The combat stress indicators among the captured troops have dropped by 60% since their capture. But more significantly," he paused, double-checking his analysis, "their tactical response times and unit cohesion scores are improving." "Impossible," Karthak muttered, but his scales betrayed his uncertainty. "We learned long ago that an army's effectiveness isn't just about physical sustenance," Chen explained. "Morale, comfort, the feeling of home. These aren't weaknesses to be engineered out of our soldiers. They're fundamental aspects of sentient psychology that can be transformed into strategic advantages." The display shifted to show the broader tactical situation. Human comfort vessels had been repositioned throughout the sector, each serving as a hub for both military operations and what they called cultural exchange. "Your own troops are teaching us a lot," Chen continued. "Each species has its own version of comfort food, its own psychological needs in combat situations. We're already adapting our recipes and facilities to accommodate them." Velox's analytical mind raced ahead to the implications. "You're not just winning the war," he realized. "You're rewriting the fundamental principles of galactic military doctrine." "War isn't just about destroying your enemy's capacity to fight," Chen agreed. "Sometimes it's about showing them a better way to live, even in combat." Karthak watched as another group of his troops entered the mess hall, their scales showing colors he hadn't seen since their training days. The rigid discipline he'd worked so hard to instill, the suppression of all comfort in pursuit of military efficiency, it all seemed hollow now. "Your vessels," he said slowly, "they're not just support ships or clever trap platforms. They're weapons of mass morale. And the most effective weapons are the ones that don't just defeat your enemy," Chen replied, "but convert them to your cause." The latest intelligence reports appeared on the display, showing the ripple effects throughout the galaxy. Other species' military forces were already beginning to question their own doctrines. The Hive Collective had suspended their nutrient standardization program. The Draxid Empire was conducting studies on the impact of dietary variety on combat effectiveness. "We're receiving requests," Chen added casually, "from your own system's governors. They want to discuss establishing comfort vessel stations in their territories, not for military purposes, they claim, but for cultural exchange." Velox's crystalline form hummed with sudden understanding. The comfort vessels were never just about maintaining human morale, were they? They were about changing the entire nature of galactic warfare. "Human history is filled with examples of cultures meeting and changing through food," Chen explained. "Wars ended, alliances formed, and understanding reached across the dinner table. We simply scaled it up to an interstellar level." Karthak stared at his empty food container, his scales now showing the complex patterns of deep thought. "The Council will need to completely reassess its military doctrine," he said finally. "We've been fighting hardware with hardware when all along, Chen finished, we were deploying the most sophisticated weapons in human history, a good meal and a taste of home." Through the mess hall windows, they could see the massive form of another comfort vessel arriving, its hull bearing the symbols of both human and alien cuisines. The revolution in warfare had begun not with a bang, but with a dinner bell. A seat at the table. One standard year after Operation Golden Arches, the Galactic Council chamber had undergone a transformation that would have been unthinkable months earlier. The traditionally austere space now featured what humans called a banquet hall, and representatives from 17 species sat together at a curved table that followed the chamber's crystalline walls. Velox, now serving as the Council's chief of interspecies relations, watched with satisfaction as diplomatic aids circulated with carefully prepared dishes specific to each species' needs and preferences. His own crystalline form had developed new facets, a sign of growth and adaptation among his kind, since embracing the human approach to military and diplomatic relations. To think, the hive representative pulsed gently, sampling a specially designed nutrient matrix that mimicked their ancient spawning grounds. We once considered their focus on comfort to be their greatest weakness. The humans have a saying, Velox replied. The way to the heart is through the stomach. We simply failed to realize they were applying it on a galactic scale. The chamber's main display showed real-time footage from across known space, where battle fleets once patrolled. Joint human-alien comfort vessels now served as neutral zones and cultural exchange centers. The massive ships had become more than military assets. They were floating embassies, cultural centers, and symbols of a new approach to interstellar relations. Admiral Chen, now serving as Earth's primary representative to the Council, approached their section of the table. I trust everything is to everyone's satisfaction. Our culinary teams have been working overtime to perfect these new recipes. Indeed, rumbled Karathak, his scales showing the deep blue of contentment that had become increasingly common among his species. The former supreme strategist had become one of the strongest advocates for the new system after his experience aboard the King's Comfort. Though I must admit, I'm still adjusting to what humans call dessert. The concept of a non-nutritive conclusion to a meal purely for pleasure remains fascinating. The Chamber's AI announced the start of the formal session, but notably, no one moved to separate dining area from the diplomatic space. That barrier, like so many others, had fallen in the wake of humanity's revolution in interstellar relations. The Council recognizes Earth's proposal for the establishment of the Galactic Culinary Academy. The AI announced. Admiral Chen, you have the floor. Chen stood, activating a holographic display that showed plans for a massive space station. The Academy will serve as both a training facility and a research center, he explained. Here, we'll develop new ways to meet the psychological and nutritional needs of all spacefaring species. But more importantly, it will serve as a neutral ground where future leaders can learn to understand each other through the universal language of food. Velox noted with interest how the station's design incorporated architectural elements from all major council species. You're not just creating a school, he observed. You're building a symbol. Exactly, Chen smiled. Every culture, every species has its own version of gathering around a table. We're simply expanding that table to encompass the galaxy. The hive representative pulsed with curiosity. And the military applications will continue, Chen assured them. The comfort vessels have proven their worth both in peace and war, but their primary mission will shift from force projection to force prevention. After all, it's much harder to maintain hostilities when you're sharing a meal with your supposed enemy. New data streamed across the display. Statistics showing the dramatic decrease in interstellar conflicts since the introduction of the Comfort Vessel program. But more telling were the cultural exchange metrics, showing unprecedented levels of voluntary interaction between formerly isolated species. We have a saying in our diplomatic corps, Chen continued. Peace through understanding, understanding through sharing, and sharing begins with a meal. The comfort vessels were never just about maintaining military morale. They were about creating spaces where barriers could fall and common ground could be found. Karthak's scales shifted to the patterns of formal declaration. The Vrax Empire supports this initiative. Our own studies have confirmed that shared dining experiences improve tactical coordination and unit cohesion across species lines. If we had understood this earlier. The past is past. Chen interrupted gently. What matters is the future we're building together. Velox rose, his crystalline form catching the light in a way that commanded attention. When I first analyzed human comfort vessels, I thought I was studying a military weakness. Instead, I was witnessing the birth of a new form of diplomacy, one that recognizes that the strongest bonds between species aren't forged in battle, but in moments of shared comfort and understanding. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Construction would begin on the Galactic Culinary Academy within the month. Already, applications were flooding in from every council species, each eager to learn what the humans called culinary diplomacy. As the session concluded, Velox watched the representatives lingering over their meals, engaging in the kind of casual conversation that had once been unthinkable in the formal council chamber. Humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization, he realized, hadn't been their technology or their military prowess. It had been their understanding that even in the cold vastness of space, comfort and connection weren't luxuries. They were necessities. The humans had turned their supposed weakness into the foundation of a new galactic order. And they had done it not with weapons or threats, but with the simple, profound power of sharing a meal.